Reinventing the wheel. It's often said when people waste time creating something that already works well. But sometimes coming up with a new approach can have a positive impact. This week on Full Frame, conversations with innovators who are reinventing the wheel. They're also upending those ordinary tasks, making the daily grind easier, and in the process, creating a better world. I'm Mike Walter, coming to you from the heart of New York City's vibrant Times Square. Let's take it full frame. In 2012, Matt Dalio founded Endless Computers, a San Francisco-based startup. He had one simple goal: provide access to affordable personal computers to people in the developing world. Almost immediately, Endless had an impact.
He's a little 12-year-old boy who 8 months ago couldn't speak English and decided to teach himself English through his computer. And I'd like to have you meet him. Jimmy, please welcome me on stage.
Hello.
So tell me about yourself, Jimmy.
Hi everybody, my name is Jimmy. I'm 12 years old and I really like to play video games and read books.
So how did you learn English?
I learned English by practicing and reading, listening. I already end the program Duolingo. I'm practicing in videos, Skype, and writing on WhatsApp.
And tell me, how much English did you know 8 months ago?
Oh, I learned 8 months ago, or March of the last year.
And how much did you know 8 months ago?
Nothing.
Here's something you may not know. 75% of the world currently has no access to computers, but Dalio is convinced that soon people in emerging markets like Guatemala and Mexico and much of Latin America will be able to get this technology. That access will radically change people's lives like never before. Endless Computers is reinventing the way people access technology, and Matt is joining us from San Francisco to share with us his hope of bringing computers to the masses and how he's making that a reality. Welcome to the broadcast, Matt.
Thank you for having me.
This kid, oh man, you want a sales feature, just bring him up on stage. He was amazing, wasn't he?
The incredible thing is that you'll find this story everywhere. Just last week I was in Bangladesh, 8 years old, learning to program. He's now an entrepreneur building a health program to help his entire country. And you will see these stories across emerging markets. Jimmy was one story that happened to be in the audience. Oh my God, the incredible thing is that this same story is everywhere.
Well, tell me about the first time you know you're creating this thing, it's going to have an impact, but then to see it, and it's so tangible, and here's this kid who's so vibrant, so alive. I mean, that confidence he has, you know, a lot of that stems from this interaction.
It's funny, I went to dinner with Jimmy that night, and he was telling me about how he's learned to hack his Android phone. He's talked, he's got all these games that he's learned to hack. There is so much entrepreneurial energy and vibrancy, so much curiosity, and there isn't even, here we talk about how there's an educational system that gets in the way. There they don't even have the educational system to either get in the way or prop someone up. So it's just like, you just got to give them the tools. You got to give them something. And here it is, Jimmy, with 8 months. You can see what the right tool can do.
Tell you what, Matt, why don't you pause for just a second? We've got a clip we're going to run, and then I want to pick up on the backside of this. Let's listen in.
Endless works easily from the moment you turn it on. All of your favorite apps are on your desktop. It includes a full ecosystem of applications, including a word processor, citations, and spreadsheets. It can even open Word, PowerPoint, and Excel files. With one click, you can access your browser. Endless was built to work with or without internet. So regardless of your ability to connect, it's just as valuable when used offline. Our apps can be used to write school reports, edit your resume, and do pretty much anything you'll need for school, work, or home. Endless also comes with a built-in app center. Inside, you can find over 100 applications that can be installed with a click of a button. And the best part is, they are all free. There's a full encyclopedia, educational videos and lectures, apps for health and wellness, parenting, and so much more.
So, Matt, that gives us an overview, but let's kind of break it down a little bit. With or without the internet, many of us don't think about that in the Western world, but that's key, isn't it?
It's funny, we're doing two very counterintuitive things. The whole Silicon Valley is moving towards two things, mobile and cloud. And they've forgotten that most of the world doesn't have desktop and doesn't have cloud. And so computing's actually gotten worse in environments in emerging markets, even a desktop computer. And the solution to that's not that hard. You just have to think about what is it that people want when they're accessing the internet. What people want is two things. It's communication, which is really cheap on a data plan, and it's information, which is really expensive on a data plan, and that's the limitation. But the reality is that most information that people use is actually the same information, right? So to give you an example, Wikipedia, 80% of all Wikipedia searches are for 3% of Wikipedia entries. So the information that we want is not all possible information. It's really actually a pretty limited subset of that information, and what we've done is gone and put it inside of each computer.
How did you get to the point where you knew what to deliver? Because, you're in the Silicon Valley where everyone's thinking outside the box and creative, and yet you almost have to kind of take a step back and say, no, we've got to strip this down. How did you get to where you are in delivering what they need?
Pretty much everything we've learned from going out in the field. It's funny how you can speculate or what the right thing is here, and then you go there and you realize how wrong you are. And you realize all of the new ideas that you can bring back here to build. We went and we just asked people what they wanted. The first approach that we had was, let's go look at statistically what it is that people want. But that doesn't include everything, right? Because I'm not searching for health information every day, but by God, when I'm searching for that information, I want that information. And so what we did was we went and we found information like people want handicrafts. Why do they want handicrafts? Well, it's because they make the handicrafts, they sell them, and that's livelihood. We found that people were constantly making CVs in internet cafes. My first thought was, why are they making CVs? And it turns out that it's a gig economy. In other words, they get a job for about 3 weeks, a month, and then they get the next job. So they're constantly having to update their CV. So we went and we made an offline application to guide people through the process of making CVs. And this is sort of symbolized how we've built the whole thing, which is we don't know what they want. Just go ask.
And so getting you in a studio talking about this is probably a rare occurrence. How often are you on planes, and what are some of the things you're learning as you go on your journeys? And where do you go?
I was in Bangladesh last week, Dubai the week before that. I'll be in Guatemala and Mexico in 2 weeks, Brazil in a couple months. So I'm sort of always on the road, and that's because that's the source of truth.
What about the cost? When we think of the cost of computers, obviously they've come down considerably when you think about buying that first computer years ago. But still, it can be prohibitive for people in the areas that you're going to. How much does it cost?
Good question. So what we found was that cost was the first big barrier for people being able to have these devices. If you see tablets sweeping across emerging markets, the question is that because they want a tablet more than a computer, or is that because they can only afford a tablet and they can't afford a computer? The insight we had was, let's use the same type of processor that's inside of a tablet. That's the most expensive thing. The second most expensive thing is a screen. Everyone's already got a TV at home. Let's go use that TV. And the third most expensive thing is an operating system. If we make a free operating system, it means that we could deliver a computer now for $79.
There are a lot of people where you're sitting who are getting incredibly rich not doing this sort of work. They're aiming at products that they know the masses will buy and spend a lot of money on, and they can live in a nice, fancy house. What made you go in this other direction?
So I actually lived in China for a year when I was 11 years old. I lived with a Chinese family. So I left my family here. I went to an all-Chinese school. I ate dumplings each day. I went on bikes to school. And when I was 16, I went back and spent a summer in an orphanage in China. And that was really when my eyes opened. There is a whole other world that is in a whole lot of need. And that is most of emerging markets, is somewhere sort of in the middle of the economic bell curve. People talk about the pyramid. It's not a pyramid anymore. It's a bell curve. And there's this rising middle class, and that's what China is, right? And we're in this very unique moment in history where technology is for the very first time accessible to that person, whether through a smartphone, a tablet, a computer. And if you go and ask McKinsey or BCG or Bain or one of these big consulting firms and you say, what is the next great trend, the largest trend of the next decade, economically from a business perspective, they will all tell you the next billion consumers. In fact, the next billion consumers is quoted by McKinsey as being the largest opportunity in the history of capitalism. And so if I've got one mission, when you saw that TED Talk, my whole reason for standing on that stage was to tell the entrepreneurs of this world, there is this opportunity over here. Go focus on that. It is an economic opportunity, and you will be able to change lives at scale that has never been possible in history before. It used to be that impact and business were separate. Now they're one and the same. And I just feel so darn lucky that I get to devote my life to using the power of business to go affect, impact at scale.
But you know what's interesting, and I don't want to go back too far, but I was just thinking about it. You work on this, you quit. You could have easily thrown in the towel and gone and do something else. So there was a reason why you're just like, well, I'm going to keep pushing. So talk to me about that.
I wake up every single morning and think about the importance of what we're doing. It sounds crazy. I believe that the destiny of 3 billion people sits on our shoulders. And that sounds absolutely crazy. But everyone else in technology is focused on desktop and cloud, and no one is focused on the two solutions, or mobile and cloud, and no one is focused on people who don't have those two things. I still haven't seen it. I've been working on this for 5 years, and the answer still hasn't come. And I believe with all the conviction in my heart that we have faced, you put a brick wall in front of me, I will find my way to run through that, only because of how important it is. When there are 3 billion people and their lives are sitting on the other end of that, you find a way. And so here we are. We've got the answer, and telling the world about it is in a whole other set of challenges. Now we have to go get that into 3 billion hands, and that is not an easy thing. But again, it does not matter how hard it is. You do it.
So extend it out for me. I mean, you must think about this. Where is Jimmy? He's at age 12, he's this kid. At 22 and 32 and 42, he's a much different child, a much different adult as a result of this childhood than the kid living in a village who doesn't have access to all of this. So extend it out for me. Your vision of the world, and there aren't a lot of people who can say, I'm touching people today, but I'm touching the future, and you can say that.
I can tell you stories. So there's an imagination of what it looks like when some n number of people has this. But I was just in Bangladesh, and there was a guy who was telling me a story of he was very lucky in his country to get access to a computer. At 8 years old, he was sort of picked on at school, and so he'd go home, and his computer was the thing. It was his outlet. It was his creative outlet. That put him on an entirely different trajectory. It was all of a sudden every curiosity he had was able to be answered. He was just a curious person, and there were the answers. And you fast forward, and he was able to go to Harvard. He met another friend from Bangladesh who he started a company with. To go back and note again, it's a company, not a foundation that's doing this. He started a company to go deliver quality health care at scale. And so they're using tablets through all of these quack doctors that line emerging markets, that line Bangladesh, to be able to connect them with a doctor, with a diagnostic set of tools that every single one of these quack doctors has, and with a set of algorithms that can mean that now people who literally have never seen a doctor before, at 65 years old, never seen a doctor in their life before, I was just with these guys last week, are able to now have access to a doctor in the capital city of Bangladesh. And that story came from an 8-year-old child who had access to a computer. What does the world look like when every kid has access to a computer? Your imagination can go as far as mine can go. It's mind-boggling.
And we don't think of computers as a level playing field, but it is the level playing field, isn't it? It's the difference between what you just described and an entirely different future.
I think that's right. There's nothing we can do to give everyone a level playing field. I had access to the best education possible. There's just nothing that we can do to give everyone access to the benefits that I have been very lucky to have in my life. And if there's one thing we can do for them, my God, it's opened up their world to everything that fits inside of a box that literally fits inside my palm.
So hope is endless, and it's a great name to have.
The name came in sort of a 30-second fit of inspiration, and it's uncovered why this is sort of I don't know, feels like it's meant to be.
Matt, it's been great chatting with you, and I know you're traveling again tomorrow, so thanks for sitting down in a studio and visiting with us, and best of luck to you in the future.
Thank you for having me.
Coming up next, a new take on the job hunt. Times they are changing, and nowhere is that more evident than in the workplace. No longer satisfied with simply collecting a paycheck. Today's job seekers want more, much more. They want the work to be meaningful, but they also want to find employers whose corporate cultures align with their own values and ideals. Our next guest knows about this shift firsthand. After a particularly lengthy and challenging job search, Nina Chung created a job search site. Hi-Ho puts human needs, life preferences, and company culture at the center of the job hunt. As co-founder and CEO, Nina is committed to fulfilling Hi-Ho's vision that nobody should be unhappy with their job. Nina believes employee happiness should be considered a basic human right. Nina Chung is here to share her own career adventures and misadventures and to tell us how Hi-Ho aims to disrupt the job search landscape. Welcome to Full Frame.
Thank you for having me.
Let me ask you about this. I guess everybody that I can think of probably has a story about a horrible job experience or a horrible job search. Do you have both?
I do have both.
And is that why you're sitting here today? I mean, is that what led to this in a sense?
Yeah. So I graduated college in 2008, which was a particularly difficult time for young job seekers. Actually, in the fall of 2007, I received a job offer and signed on to work at Bear Stearns, which is one of the large investment banks in New York at the time. Ultimately, that bank ended up collapsing, and I became a refugee of, Wall Street before I even started working. So after that, it was just extremely difficult for me to find a job, and I was spending 8 hours or more a day applying for jobs online, speaking to people, and nothing really worked out. So I've used pretty much every job search site there was at the time. And finally, after a year and a half, I did end up getting back into investment banking. But that was, a very long, arduous, exhausting process. So I haven't forgotten what that was like. And combined with some of my not great job experiences, it really led to the culmination of Hi-Ho.
So I guess going through that whole, I gotta find a job, you availed yourself of probably everything out there.
Yes.
And probably saw a lot of the shortcomings. I mean, what were some of the things that kind of hit you as you were going through the process that, geez, if I could change this, this is what I'd change?
Well, I think a lot of job sites out there don't really focus on millennial job seekers at all, which is unfortunate because as of 2015, millennials are now the majority of the workforce. So they tend to focus on things like pay or job title or, the largeness of a company, for example, size of a company. But for a lot of millennials, that's not what they care about. I can say that because I consider myself millennial, but we care more about things like company culture or level of flexibility that a company would offer you, and work-life balance or work-life harmony. So those things just typically aren't reflected on any of these competitor sites.
Is it because you look at your parents and say, I'm not going to go that route? I mean, why? Because I think what you're saying is so right on target. I've got two millennials myself, and it's an entirely different way of looking at the landscape.
Right. Definitely. Gen Xers, I guess is what they're called, or baby boomers, they definitely have a different perception of what a job should be. A lot of people think that a job is to put food on the table, and they're more interested in pay, getting a promotion, advancing in the workplace, and also I think a lot of millennials have had to deal with parents who are divorced, and because of that they've seen firsthand what the impact of having a life filled only with work can really lead to. So they want to avoid that, as well as just having this all-consuming lifestyle of work and no play.
And one of the other things you have to do when you enter business is look at the landscape and see who your competitors are and what they offer. So I thought maybe we could walk through we've picked 4 job search engines, and maybe we can go through each and kind of talk about what characteristics are, and then maybe we can come back to you and talk to you about how you differ. So we'll start with Indeed, and this kind of maps out, it's a traditional job board. You can get in, you can type in certain words, those keyword searches, and a lot of different industries available there. So that, how would you call that? What kind of a model? Is that more just traditional?
It's a pretty traditional job board. It's keyword based, and you basically type in something like paralegal in New York, and then it spits out thousands of job searches or job search results.
So we've looked at one. Let's take a look at our second, which I believe is higher. This is a different model, though, isn't it? It's kind of the reverse, isn't it?
It is the reverse. So I think they only accept 5% of candidates who apply. You basically upload your resume and a few details about yourself, and they tell you whether you're accepted into the program, and after that, companies can decide if they want to speak with you or not.
So the first one, I guess you would kind of call it a cattle call. Everybody's out there.
Right.
The second is more geared towards the company. They kind of help whittle it down in a sense for them. Yep. Let's take a look at our third. This one's really kind of going towards your market in a sense.
A little
in that
bit.
It's basically aiming at social good mission is what jumps out at me, which is also a structure of millennials too, isn't it? I mean, they really want to make a difference in the world.
Right. Millennials do list one of their priorities as having a purpose or a mission on the workforce, in the workplace rather. So Idealist is, pretty ideal actually for millennials.
And of course the fourth is LinkedIn, and I think everybody in the universe is on LinkedIn now. I'm not sure everybody knows how to use it or what it's all about, but it's a professional networking used by recruiters and the headhunters, and also job postings. So when you looked at the landscape and you saw these 4, we're just taking them as an example, where were the pockets where you saw where they weren't connecting the dots where you think you can?
So actually most of these focus on a different demographic from us. We really focus on specifically millennial job seekers in the age group of roughly 24 to 32. So a lot of these either are more general or not exactly the target we're going for. So part of that is age. And another is really the priorities that come with being a millennial and having this mindset. So we do give people a lot more options in terms of what they can prioritize in the job search. Normally if you go on to, say, Indeed, and you're doing a job search for paralegal, as I mentioned before, oftentimes you get a spit out of thousands of job searches or job search results, and they're not prioritized in a way that's meaningful or purposeful. So the way that they structure it oftentimes is that companies that pay the most end up having their job search results the highest. So it's not really keeping the job seekers' best interests in mind. It's much more focused on the companies, and what we're trying to do is give job seekers a little bit more leeway and a little bit more benefits there.
You're kind of jostling the work world in a sense. A good friend of mine is the director of this broadcast. We always laugh about one of his bosses who would see people conversing and, no more talking, get back to work. This concept of happiness as a human right, there are a lot of bosses who don't think that should be a human right, where it's crack the whip. How do you change that mindset, do you think? And why do you see it as a basic human right to be happy at the workplace?
Yeah, well, I think, the more I looked at it, the more happiness at work seemed to be synonymous with happiness in life, because we are spending so much time in the workplace, probably, a third to half our lives and the majority of our waking hours. And even with, technology, smartphones, what have you, you're pretty much on call 24/7. At least that's what it feels like to me oftentimes. So, there's a much more blurred line of what work and life means, and to that extent, if you're trying to be happy in life, which is kind of the goal of any human being, and the goal of human nature, I would say, then why not seek happiness in the workplace as well? So this is, I think it's a newer concept, but it's something that a lot of millennials have come away with after the recession and what they had to suffer through in this more scarcity-based mindset where really employers were king. I think now employees have much more power, and they can go ahead and make some decisions that they didn't really feel empowered to make a few years before.
It's interesting you worked at Bear Stearns, and I mean Wall Street's not a stone's throw away from here. Most people on Wall Street would tell you that no, it's the shareholders that's most important. My boss would tell me that it's the viewers that are more important, customers, however you break it down. But you have this sense that if an employee's happy, that it does pay and the shareholder. So give me your thoughts on that, because I guess if we're all miserable, perhaps we're not. Our work is probably not as strong as if we're happy, right? I mean,
yeah, it actually makes a big impact, happiness and employee engagement, to a company's bottom line. So it's been proven that an employee who is happier and more engaged at work tends to take less sick days. There's also lower or higher retention, I guess you can say, lower turnover. So people who are more engaged and feel happier at work tend to leave a job less easily. And actually the #1 reason people leave a job is due to company culture. And when you're looking at millennials who have much higher turnover than previous generations, it's extremely costly for companies to constantly have to hire replacements. It's about $15,000 to $25,000 every time a company needs to replace a millennial employee. So that cost really adds up, along with the other things I've mentioned. And overall, companies that have better cultures and employees who are more engaged, they tend to reach their goals faster and better, I guess you can say. So there's a lot of reasons why a company would want their employees to be engaged.
I read a piece in a news magazine, I think it was last year, where HR people were starting to complain about younger employees, that they didn't mind the setting up yoga, but now one kid wants karate, nobody else does, and why do I have to do all of this stuff? Do you think you're going to run up against that kind of mindset, and is that something that they're just going to have to get used to? I mean, you're going to have to offer these perks.
So right now you see a lot of that in Silicon Valley and in the tech startup space, where I think there's a particularly insane war for talent, especially with people with a technical background. So it hasn't necessarily reached corporate America yet, but I think given that millennials are now the majority of the workforce, it will become a bigger issue, and corporate America will have to catch up sooner or later. Yeah, so it's a matter of time, I think.
It's funny that you say that, because this person was from the Silicon Valley and they were just ready to rip their hair out. But I guess if you're competing for that kind of talent and the pool isn't that big, you almost have to do this, don't you?
Yes, you do. And actually, Wall Street Journal published a very interesting article. I think it was called like "The Lavish Perks of Today's Startups" or something along those lines. But it talked about how companies now have a happiness manager. They have people who are willing to do whatever it takes to get companies or to get people to come on board, whether that's catered lunches or yoga studios, as you mentioned, or just unlimited vacations, very flexible work policies. So that's definitely something that's very prevalent in Silicon Valley, and I think that culture will trickle down into the rest of America.
Do you think you can go too far?
I don't know, maybe. But ultimately, there's a balance, because companies know that it does pay to have workers happy and to have workers engaged. And if you're keeping people at the office longer and keeping them happy at the office longer, then they'll also be more likely to produce good work and to stay there longer as well.
Two final questions, and I'll pair them. What advice would you give to a millennial right now who's out there looking for a job but doesn't want to settle for something, they want to find that perfect fit? And what do you say to the parent of that child who has them living in their basement and just wants them to get a job and get out and start their life?
Yeah, well...
because that's what you see, isn't it? I mean...
Yeah, millennials are much more likely to not take on a job and, be slightly miserable versus taking on a job they don't like and be very miserable. I would say for millennials that they should probably consider talking to people that they can get honest feedback from. So if you go into a company, I would ask to speak to their most junior employees. I think they're most likely to be candid with you and to offer some, good advice or give you the landscape of what, the HR and the management is like there. I also think, and this is a piece of advice I got from senior citizens when I was working with healthcare real estate and senior living nursing homes and such. So the #1 regret of seniors on their deathbed was that they wish they'd had the courage to live a life that was true to themselves and not a life that they thought someone else wanted them to live. So I would definitely tell these people that they should be true to themselves and to evaluate and reevaluate their priorities, because it'll change many times throughout their career. And to the parents, I would just say to be patient. I think this is, you know, students are for the first time, or millennials are for the first time, worse off than their parents are. I think it's actually the first time in over a century. So it isn't easy for millennials these days either, and you know, a lot of them have a lot of debt and they feel the pressure as well. So I would say to be patient, and I think my story is also a testament to that.
Nina, thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
And good advice. Coming up next, have you hailed a cab lately? Your options for a hired ride are growing. And our next guest is adding a feminine touch. We'll be right back. It's unusual to see no matter where you travel in the world. In fact, when was the last time you saw a woman driver behind the wheel of a cab? It's extremely rare, even right here. There are 115,000 people driving taxis and limousines in New York City, but only, get this, 3% of them are women. Our next guest is working to increase those numbers and to ensure that more women are in the driver's seat. She's a wife, mother, and founder of She Taxis, or She Rides, as the service is called, within New York City limits. It's the first company in the United States to offer taxi and car services for women, from women, through an iPhone application. This service emulates already existing models that are successful in a number of other countries. Here to tell us about the advantages of being both behind the wheel and in the passenger seat of She Taxis is Stella Mateo. Stella, welcome to Full Frame.
Thank you. Thank you for having me in the show. I appreciate the opportunity.
You bet. So let me ask you the obvious question, which is why? And then the second one, why two names?
Okay, the reason why it's a movement to empower women financially and personally. And the reason for the name is in New York City, you're only allowed to use the name taxis for the yellow cabs. Outside of the New York City area, it's She Taxis, but in New York City, She Rides.
I see. Let me ask you about the concept. You've been around the taxi industry for a while. When did it first occur to you that, geez, there aren't any women driving these things?
After my husband is the founder and spokesperson for the New York City Federation of Taxi Drivers, and through the over 20 years, listening to all the issues pertaining to the industry, I was more focused on women issues. And then when we looked at the statistics and see that, as you mentioned, 97% of the drivers are men. In the yellow industry, less than 1%. But 60%, very interesting, 60% of the ridership are women.
So talk to me about drivers. How hard? I mean, there obviously isn't a large pool out there, as we've been talking. I mean, how do you grow that? What were some of the obstacles that you faced right off the bat?
Some of the obstacles were, some people felt that, why women and felt that we're not inclusive of men, and that's when I turned around and said, how can anyone say that? 97% of the industry is dominated by men, and 1%, less than 1%, as I mentioned, of the yellow cabs.
It's interesting, I was doing a Google search, and I'm not trying to besmirch the cab industry in any way, but I just put in woman assaulted by a cab driver in a Google search, and it was amazing how many hits came up. And here in the United States, in England, in India, I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And I guess even if that's a really minuscule percentage, for a woman to see that article or that story, it ends up in here for a long, long time. So what is the fear factor for women? What is the belief system getting into a car and knowing that a woman's driving for you? How does that shift for them?
Oh, the women that the feedback that we get is that they are very, very happy, because you're in a small confined space, and I'm not saying that men are dangerous in any way or that, they're at risk by riding with the men, but just you feel safer, a woman with another woman. And also, I have two daughters. I feel it's a mother instinct. I always feel that women are more protective of other women and young girls, being a mother. Also, when my girls go out at night, I feel safer. I feel better knowing that they can have the option of, requesting a woman.
So when you first came up with this idea, and your husband obviously was on board, and you started to come up with the concept, what was the initial feedback you were getting from women? Because the thing that's interesting about your operation is it's women drivers, women customers.
Yes, yes. When women get older, sometimes they can't find work. When you retire, our ambassador for She Taxis is 65 years old. And she's so excited because she's retired, and she said, where else would I find work? Size doesn't matter, your age, your ethnic background. So it's very attractive for us to be able to do this kind of work.
Tell us about your adornment here.
Pink. Yes, pink. I offer all the drivers that join G-Taxi, that join the movement, the pink pashmina. And the reason for pink is it's a girly color, it's a friendly color, it's feminine. And so we want to make a statement with it.
What are the most popular reasons for using your services that you hear from the customers?
Safety. Safety is the #1 reason.
And then what about other countries? I mean, we're talking about specifically New York, but obviously doing your research, you must have found that this is something that's springing up in other countries. What did you find?
Yes, it's one of the countries, and I believe one of the main reasons why India is because Muslim women, for religious beliefs, is another reason why this is a great idea. Muslim women cannot ride in a car with a man, or driver men. So they also have a service women for women because of those religious beliefs.
And do you think that this is something, obviously you're bringing up India, I know that it's in other countries as well. Do you think that this is something that's kind of a tidal wave, that this has just started? We're going to see this everywhere?
Well, I hope to bring it everywhere. I don't know about anyone else, but we're working, we're going to develop it nationwide first, and then we're going to go international. We've been contacted by different countries. I've done interviews with France, Italy, Dubai, Spain, different countries around the world contacting us, wanting for us to bring the services.
Wow. You brought up men and how, it's overwhelmingly in their favor. But I suspect, this is a litigious society that we live in, that, that there's going to be somebody who's going to complain and say that this is discrimination, that sort of thing. Are you prepared for that? Have you heard that already?
That was from the very beginning. It was one of the main issues. And when I was asked, that some people felt that it was discrimination against discrimination, I said, of course it's discrimination. 97% of an industry dominated by men and less than 1% in another. That is discrimination, absolutely.
What about feedback? What have you heard so far from passengers and the drivers who work for you?
We have feedback from women, especially coming from flying internationally into airports. One of our drivers, our ambassador driver, said one of the women said to her, look, sometimes we're running for meetings in traveling, and we run back, we schedule behind schedule, we're traveling, but we're able to change in the back of the car because it's a woman, so they feel comfortable. The comfort level, it's totally different than when they ride with a man. The compliment that we get, how comfortable they feel besides safe.
Well, we were comfortable talking to you. Thanks so much for coming in. Best of luck with your new venture. It sounds like it's doing very, very well.
Thank you. Thank you for the support.
Stella, thanks so much.
While Stella and She Taxi are reinventing the way women are hailing a cab, one of the world's most famous innovators is working on reinventing the way we travel long distances. In 2013, entrepreneur Elon Musk proposed a conceptual high-speed transportation system called the Hyperloop. The idea is that passengers would ride inside capsules at tremendously high speeds in pneumatic tubes. A cross-continent trip that today takes days could be completed in mere hours. Construction of the Hyperloop itself is still in the startup phase, but students at UCLA's Ideas campus have already envisioned what the Hyperloop travel experience will be like. And as full-frame contributor Sandra Hughes found out, reinventing the way we all travel is no small challenge.
Driving from Los Angeles to San Francisco takes between 6 and 8 hours. It's about 620 kilometers. Flying between the two cities takes about an hour, but could cost hundreds of dollars. The third travel option may look like a cross between a ride at Disneyland and a science fiction transporter, but it's under a decade away, and it's called the Hyperloop. For a $20 ticket, you can travel between the two cities in about 30 minutes.
It changes the perception of time. It's going to be revolutionary.
Revolutionary because the Hyperloop could change the way people work, live, and commute.
people can live and they will be able to live in cheaper towns and cities and commute to bigger cities for work. I mean, it's going to also change the way we live. I mean, it's quite incredible to think about that you can actually, live in Los Angeles and work in San Francisco, just like this daily commute, 30 minutes.
The technology behind the Hyperloop isn't new, but the way this idea is coming to life is new. SpaceX founder Elon Musk threw out his vision of a Hyperloop transportation system in 2013 as an open source to which engineers, architects, and students could all contribute.
It's a really good sort of example of a 21st century business model. And that is a business model which is not centered in a single entity. And this kind of cuts through the corporate red tape and bureaucracy and focuses just on the creative members.
Professor Craig Hodgett, Professor Marta Nowak, and 25 students at the University of California, Los Angeles School of Architecture Ideas Lab took on the challenge. Using existing pneumatic tube technology, they envisioned capsules using solar energy.
We would have frictionless wheels. They'd be magnetic or air. And so if you gave this thing a little push, it's like an air hockey puck. It will just bounce around forever.
The students worked in teams creating mock-ups.
We were just looking at the data of Elon's white paper and expanding it. So taking it to the next level, looking at, how big would a Hyperloop station have to be? What would the interior of the capsule look like? How would you design it? Would you be able to stand up inside of a capsule while it's moving at 760 miles an hour? Yes, absolutely.
They had to create stations where thousands of passengers per hour would arrive and depart.
As an architect, we try to see what we can do, especially to a city. And Hyperloop is such a big new infrastructure. It's a new transportation system. As we can see, it has millions of possibilities of how it can impact on people's lives, also how it can change the city.
They all worked on creating the capsule and faced one unique problem.
We'd take turns sitting in the capsule, ask someone, how does this feel or how does that feel? And really work off one another to pick the best visual scenario in order to feel less claustrophobic.
A 5-mile test track and station will be built in Quah Valley, California in 2016.
We don't envision enormous technical hurdles, but they may be there.
Or may not. Either way, everyone's on board with predictions that in less than 10 years' time, Hyperloop should be a reality. For Full Frame, this is Sandra Hughes in Los Angeles.
We'll be right back with this week's Full Frame Close-Up. For the past decade, San Francisco-based artist Andreas Amador has reinvented how artwork is showcased. He creates very temporary geometric art pieces on the beach. And even though his artwork washes away with the tide, often within minutes, it's memorialized through photographs and video. His artwork has found a following in San Francisco and on social media around the world. But for this artist, the most important aspect of his work is being in the moment as he creates it.
I get asked why do I do something that's going to wash away so soon? Life is not going to last. Nothing we will do will last. And so the question becomes, why do anything? Like, what's the enduring value of anything that we do? All that really matters is that we're living our life in joy, in a joyous way. And if we can fill our lives as much as possible with the things that give us energy, that we're excited to engage, where we feel that we're invigorated and our soul shines even brighter, then it's like we ought to be doing that. That's like, why wouldn't you do that, even if it's going to wash away? My name is Andres Amador, and I'm an artist. I call the art that I do earthscape painting. I actually have a degree in environmental sciences, and I was in the Peace Corps doing conservation in Ecuador. I thought that would be my field from then on out, but when I came back to San Francisco as an adult, I realized just what San Francisco has to offer in terms of personal expression, which I never tapped into previously. And I delved into the realm of creative expression. So that's been the path that I've been on. But while doing that, the influence keeps creeping in of the world around me, and more the natural world. I derive so much inspiration from nature. In doing this art, I have become much more connected to the cycles of nature, and then that has continued to move in my life in bigger ways. With the beach art, I have to do it according to the tides, and the tides are according to the movement of our planet and the moon. And then there's, throughout the seasons, the beach changes. And now that I'm doing this at a more full-time level, I'm actually planning out the entire year of the tides. And so now really my life is revolving around the tides. So I'm much more connected to the world around me than I ever have before. I started off doing ones that were more geometrically oriented. And those were inspired by the world of geometry, and which is a well explored terrain by cultures throughout history. So I was inspired by ancient architecture, and among my studies were crop circles, which I would say are the most direct connection to the early art that I did. As the years went by, my explorations branched off into areas of natural design, getting in around me. This is that stylistic thing of, it's like just this top edge got chopped, but this edge stays. But that top edge, this is the top edge, that's the side.
Well, this is the side. I'm going to cut off the very top piece.
Yeah, take off that one. There is a kinship that I feel with the many traditions around the world that create art where the process is the focus, and when the product is done, they sweep it away. It's meant to be destroyed in some fashion because the end result is not the goal. For many years I had this anxiety that what was I doing to contribute to the world? I wasn't alleviating hunger, or I wasn't solving problems of world peace, or I'm not protecting the animals, and there's a part of me that feels so sensitive to the world around us that it's almost as though I had to retreat from the empathy feeling with the suffering that occurs in nature and in people. If we don't feel love and joy within ourselves, then we're not going to project that into the world. The art that I did today, it's going to be washed away, it's not going to last, but through my own experience of happiness, everyone who watched feels happy. They're going to go out in the day and they're going to send that out. They've taken pictures and they're going to post them wherever, and that's going to spread to around the world to other people, and they're going to experience joy. And the image might inspire something, then a little bit of impact would occur where I really do feel that it has this kind of ongoing cumulative quality of just kind of shifting the consciousness.
Your jacket's kind of like what I did today. I know. It's very similar, huh? Yeah.
If we can live in a world where we're all radiating, even when we're feeling bad and even when times are tough, if we can be in that place of looking for how to increase our radiance, to do the things that have us feeling joyful, that would be amazing. I feel blessed to be able to send that message out.
That's it for this week. Join the conversation with us on social media. We are CCTV America on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. And now you can watch Full Frame on our new mobile app, available worldwide on any smartphone for free. Get the latest news headlines and connect to us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Weibo. Search CCTV America on your app store to download today. All of our interviews can still also be found online at cctv-america.com. And let us know what you'd like us to take Full Frame next. Simply email us at fullframe@cctv-america.com. Until then, I'm Mike Walter in New York City. We'll see you next time.